What's up my loves? My name is Paige, this is Pages with Paige, and today we're going to be doing my June wrap up. Hello my loves. So June happened and I am very surprised at the month of reading that I had. It was very scattered. I read in lots of little chunks. I also participated in Stephanie's book versus 48-hour mini TBR Starhop, and I'll leave a link to my blog up above so you can check that out if you would like to and hear my on-the-go thoughts. But with that, I am super happy with the things that I've read, and I just want to talk through the stats and then we'll dive into talking about the actual books themselves. Because in the month of June, I read 17 books, which equated to 5,311 pages when my TBR was like 4.5, but the TBR Starhop definitely influenced that, which broke down to an average of 177 pages per day. In terms of pages per book, it was 312, so slightly on the shorter side, but still over that 300, so proud of that. Had one that was under 100 pages, 5 that were in the hundreds, 7 that were in the 300s, 3 that were in the 400s, and 1 in the 700s range. My average rating was the lowest it's been all year with a 3.94, and I didn't have any 5 stars, which I will get to later, but I think that is a contributing factor to that lower number. I read 1 contemporary, 8 fantasy, 2 graphic novels, 1 non-fiction, and 5 science fiction. I read 5 physical books, 1 ebook, 4 audio and ebook combinations, and 7 physical and audiobook combos. In age range, I read 4 middle grade, 5 young adult, 1 new adult, and 7 adult. For ratings, I had 2 3 stars, 3 3.5s, 7 4 stars, and 5 4.5s. So I had a lot of nearly theirs, but not quite. I read 5 standalones. I started 2 new series. I continued 8 books were parts of a series over 6 series, and I completed 2 series. So with that was one of the series I actually started. I continued and then finished it, and I do have a whole vlog coming on that. And the other one was the Animorphs. I did it. I completed it. I did it. My biggest book was Brisinga at 748 pages, and my smallest was Galatea at 56 pages. My listening hours was a 3.91, so I read a lot more physical books. And in terms of publication, from 2001 to 2005, I read 4 books. Between 2006 and 2010, I read 1. From 2011 to 2015, I read 4. And between 2016 to 2020, I read 5. I read 1 2021 release and 2 2022 releases. So, they're my stats. Let's talk about the books, because so I am going to scoot to the side and just put all the 4 Animorphs titles that I read, because they were the first 4 things that I read. I ended up binge reading them and just finishing off the series. It was brilliant. The Absolute was 3.5. The Sacrifice was 3 stars. The Answer was 4 stars. And The Beginning, which was the last book, was 4 stars. The Absolute was when things started ramping up and we were looking at the Yeerks doing a full-on invasion and not being silent, really going active towards conquering Earth. And this was from Marco's perspective, and I gave it a 3.5, which is still unusual from Marco's perspective. I usually like his more, but this just felt a little outlandish as they were like trying to get to the governor and they didn't even know who she was. They didn't Google anything about her or like look up that it was an actual female, so they were surprised that she was, and I was just like, really? So I thought there were a few choices that were a little bit interesting, but overall it was a good time. Then The Sacrifice, I gave 3 stars. This just cemented that Axe really lost a lot of favor with me as a character. I just didn't find his growth to be enough to warrant how he is, and I don't really remember too much of what happened in this one, so it not sticking, any of the plot being completely memorable is very interesting that that's the case. Then we had The Answer, and I gave this 4 stars. This was Jake's perspective, and I found it really interesting seeing the difference in his character now that he had things to lose, and I felt that it definitely set up the last book excellently and really hammered home the messages that had been prevalent throughout the entire one. There were tough choices to be made and Jake went through a lot of questioning, and I just found it very interesting in the way that they decided to approach this all-out war penultimate book. And it ends on an absolute cliffhanger. Then the beginning, again, gave 4 stars, and holy shit, I'm really happy with the conclusion to this. I do know that a lot of people are mad at the way that K.A. Applegate chose, and I've read the author letter that addresses the choices that they made, and I found it really awesome that they're like, let's be real about this. Like, these people are not going to just continue on and live a normal life for the most part. It's going to be troublesome. There's going to be a lot of different influences now, knowing that alien life is out there, as well as these abilities and the fact that war can be all-consuming. I definitely felt pain for the conclusion to this, and I know that the choices that were made were not like choices, and I feel like one of my friends and I were talking about it, and I was like, I'm so mad they've done me dirty, but also they've done it perfectly. And it was entertaining because I said, man, sit, sir, this, no, what, ow, rude. It's bleak and I want some happiness, and it's a really fucked up way of dealing with it, but I'm really, really happy that it went a realistic way. And I feel like after reading this many fucking Animorphs books, at least the payoff was good. I'm sad because I would like to have it all nice and happy and fluffy and lovely, but that's not meant to be, and that's not the realities of war. And the whole point of Animorphs is to be a commentary on war in a way that is different from our usual stories and narratives. So I feel like it's valuable in the way that it's done. There are things that I'm like, fuck, I wish this was possible to be able to do it this way or that way, but at the end of the day, I also really appreciate the choice that they did make. So that was the conclusion to the Animal series, and I'm so fucking happy that it's done. So then I didn't read anything for nearly a week, just because I couldn't get in the swing of it. Like, it took me 4 days to get into the Animorphs and just binge read them, and then another 4 days after that to be able to continue on. I need to go pick up Ash and then I will be back. Alright, so Ash has been collected, so continuing on with the things that I read during the 48-hour TBR Starhop. The first was Lore Olympus Volume 2, and I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed seeing Persephone and Hades' relationship continue to be supportive and grow, and I really appreciate the way that a serious topic occurred in the first book, how it's presented in this, and the consequences. I was raging at it and loving it and just feeling all the emotions, and I feel like Rachel Smythe does an excellent job of creating a important narrative, and I'm vibing with the art style better this one. Still not loving it, but I liked it more, and I just thought it was really cute and wholesome. Then I reread Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker and gave this 4.5. I adored this with my entire heart and soul. I really enjoyed following Briseis' story, and I'm so excited to be able to read The Women of Troy this month and see how her story progresses. This is giving a voice to women of the Trojan War. I don't think it ever claims to be a feminist retelling. It's just taking one character from the Iliad that's not even mentioned that much and given a depth to them, and seeing the perspective of the women that were not as prevalent in the Iliad and in Trojan War stories. So I feel like Pat does an exceptional job of actually being able to provide that background, even if it's not 100% historically accurate. I feel like it's just important to offer a different perspective, and this was one of the first Trojan War retellings I read, and with that, I don't really like war stories, mostly because I find it's bickering with two men. This does focus on Achilles quite a bit, but understandably considering Briseis is Achilles' war prize. There's a lot of conversation in that to unpack, and I will eventually have a blog coming out that had a few more thoughts on this as well. And then I read Starsight by Brandon Sanderson and gave this 4 stars. Spencer didn't annoy the shit out of me in this, which was fantastic, because my main critique of Skyward was she was so annoying. She's like this miniature little rage machine and would be like, I am going to crush the skulls of my enemies and tread on their eyeballs and eat their kidneys, and I was like, honey, please, you can't even reach to their toe. So for this, it was a lot more enjoyable. They were in a different environment, which I really, really liked, and there were a lot of different character dynamics, which I really appreciated. I did miss being back with some of the characters from the first one, but having Embot and Doomslug in this one made it all the while, because I love those characters very, very much. Then, the biggest surprise of the month, I read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and I gave this 4 stars. I do have a blog that I am needing to edit to be able to post of this, and I'm just, wow, I expected to cringe read this and or just not like it, but I understand why it's a booktube darling, and I had so much fun with this. I think it was the perfect time to pick it up. So if you're ever participating in a 48-hour readathon and can pop this on, I'd highly recommend doing so. So I'm not going to say too much more, but hopefully we'll have that vlog out to you sometime in the next 2 weeks. Then I read Galatea by Madeline Miller and gave this a 3.5. I really enjoyed it. I just didn't know what to expect. I think the writing's beautiful, but it was just a snippet and I wanted more. I didn't feel like there was the nuance, and in 54 pages I shouldn't have really expected it, but just knowing Madeline Miller's writing, I wanted that little bit more. It was still beautiful and easy to read, but I feel like this is going to be better on a reread, and like the more I reread it, the more I'm gonna get out of it each time. And for an initial read, 3.5, and it is stunning. Then the book that surprised me in not a great way was 12% Dread by Emily McGovern, and I gave this a 3 stars. It wasn't a bad graphic novel. The art style was more wordy than I originally anticipated. It was very confusing to keep track of what was going on. The back says a story of friendship, capitalism, and never putting your fucking phone away. And I get that, but I don't think it actually managed to get that across, and or well, if someone did. I think that I don't even think I took offense to like constantly being on my phone. I'm not the kind of person that is feeling like that is how it is, so it wasn't even like an attack on my personality. It was very disjointed. It didn't make a lot of sense. The characters were really fucked up, really weird, and just rude, and it didn't offer anything to me. So, and it was a slog to get through this, which I wouldn't have expected that. It was so slow and it just went nowhere. Then I read Choice Words, a collection of writing about abortion, and it was edited by Louise Swin, and I gave this a 4.5. I didn't think I was going to enjoy this. As someone who's not really wanting to consider having kids at this current point in time, probably will, but also not. It was such valuable information that I had no idea about. I've never looked into abortion laws in Australia, and in particular New South Wales. I've never needed to, but I felt that it just offered so much history and then so much relevancy to our current climate. Like, and there was one that has stuck with me, but she was so man-bashy that it was hilarious, and I don't think it would go over well. Like, that one essay would probably turn a lot of people off continuing with the essay choices just because it was so like, men are horrible, blah 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 blah. At the same time, their points were also slightly valid, even if they went about it in a very interesting way. Here it is. But all unwanted pregnancies are caused by irresponsible ejaculations of men. Period. Why don't men have contraception that they readily use, and or like the oral contraception? Oh, because we stopped studies because they wussed about having cramps and pains and all of that, which is what we suffer on a day-to-day, and the pill doesn't always alleviate, and I'm still grateful for it. Please don't take it away. So I found that very entertaining, and then just some of the quotes in here was just oofed. There was just a lot of quotes in this that I found really valuable, and I can understand that this is not going to be a book that everyone needs to pick up. I definitely only think you should pick it up if you're interested in it and not currently going on a fertility journey. For those that are pro-life, I would recommend seeing how far you get in this just to see, but for me as pro-choice, I definitely found value in this, but I don't think it's going to be for everyone. Next, I read Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, which is the second in the Shadow and Bone series, and gave 4 stars as well. I found this one to be slightly, just smidge less interesting than the first one, but still really enjoyed it. I'm gonna edit that vlog and realize that I felt the opposite. So again, I don't want to go too much into it because the second book and will have my thoughts, but I found the beginning of this to be very interesting considering what happens, and then the majority of the book is not really focused on that central element to it that I thought it was going to be, but it does come to the forefront at the end. But I found this really interesting, really fun, and I really adored reading this. Then I read Of the Wild by E. Wampheim, and this was for the Reading Wren's Queer or Not book club, and I gave this 4.5. I adored Eris and the little creatures and children that they've adopted. I loved seeing the different representation in it and finding a place for yourself. I thought that it was really important that the kids continued to develop throughout the story, and it is very short. I didn't give it a full 5 stars just because I wanted there to be more. I didn't want to leave the characters where it were, and I did find that I had more questions than answers when I finished this. There are the tall ones, which we don't really find much out about. I want to hear what happens with the kids, and like a prequel to this as well. I feel like there was a lot more information that needed to go into this, even just to flesh it out to 200 pages, just to make it that 5-star read, because it was so beautiful. There was so much to it. It was just those few little things that I'm like, you were almost a 5-star, you was beautiful, you was wow, but just sprinkle that in. So that was my experience with that one, but overall a beautiful, beautiful read. And if you would like to have a queer, whimsical moment, this would be a good one to pick up. Then I read Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo and gave this 4 stars, which surprised the crap out of me because I didn't know if I was going to enjoy this. I appreciate that it is telling the different stories of these people in Britain, and I really enjoyed the representation that was in this. I wasn't sure how I was going to go with it being literary fiction and that just not really being my jam, but I thought that the writing was beautiful and the way that the stories interwove at the end was amazing. I had only wished for myself that I kept a running list of who the characters were and where they were placed, because we meet these people and they all come together, but I couldn't remember exactly all the ties for 1 or 2 of them. I could remember majority, but I just wish I had made those connections and done like a map of these people just so I had that there to reference, so I could go, oh yeah, that's why you're having that interaction. It was a really fantastic read in critiquing Britain and how people have experienced it throughout the years. If you're interested in this sort of thing, I definitely recommend picking it up. Then I read Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, the third in the Grishaverse. So I started, continued, and finished all in 1 month. Who the fuck am I? Yes! I gave this 4.5. I really, really enjoyed how this wrapped up. I know that a lot of people get pissed about it, but I'm not mad. I would like to read more about particular characters, and I'm going to. I also think that I don't know where the world's going to go. I appreciate that I feel like the characters in this, their story wrapped up, and it was a really lovely time. So yes, I'm excited to continue on with Six of Crows and all of those. I don't know how I'll go with the King of Scars duology, just because I have heard mixed things about it, but we'll see where I get up to. So thank you, Liv, for putting Six of Crows on my friends list. So I then forced myself to binge read this because it was a fantastic time for me. And like I said, the vlog will have more thoughts, I hope. Then I read Red Queen by Christina Henry and gave this 4.5 as well. I just love Christina Henry's writing. I love that they're not afraid to go there. It's creepy. It wasn't as gory as the first one, which surprised me. I was expecting it to be a lot worse, but at the same time I'm also not mad because the first one really throws you through a loop. There are no cannibals in this, so that's always great. There are trolls that eat people, so you know, it's dialed down just a fraction, but it's still that really confusing, fucked up, dark style that I love from Christina Henry. So not a 5-star read, but I think I knew what to expect a little bit more, so it didn't have as much of the shock value that Alice had for me. But I still really, really love Christina Henry's writing and will continue on with Looking Glass, and I'm curious to see how it all shapes up after this one. So I think it's a collection of 4 stories, so very curious indeed. And then the final book I read, I actually finished in July, but we're counting it here because apparently it counts until I film my wrap up. And that's Brissinger by Christopher Paolini, and I gave this 3.5. I'm struggling with this series. I feel like the second I put it down, I'm happy to not read it, but the second I pick it up, I enjoy it for the most part. I felt that Eragon's character growth in this was a lot better than the first and second, and I feel like I need to know what happens at the end. And then Ash reminded me there's this story afterwards, and I really, getting through Inheritance is going to be enough, because for this, whilst I really liked the elements that got introduced and we're seeing everything come together, just the fact that I'm so just bleh when I put it down is a little bit concerning. And so my overall enjoyment wasn't as high, because I was just like, yeah, cool, I'll pick it up. Oh look, I'm having fun. Puts down, yeah. That's where I'm currently at for this one, but I will finish off Inheritance and then decide if I can be fucked reading the newer thing that came out. So these, plus the 4 Animorphs and Of the Wild, were the books that I read in the month of June. She putting that down. Fuck, that's heavy. Let me know in the comments, what did you get to in June that you were most thrilled to read? And did you have any 5 stars? I'm happy that Shadow and Bone were 4 stars, because I genuinely expected it to be like a 2 stars. So let me know any 5 stars or most surprising. If you like this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of this mess, feel free to subscribe. I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye! She's losing the stack, but I need to take a thumbnail.